And we're back in the car on a Sunday like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Well, it's a movie anniversary, a film which I have discussed a few times on the channel, but not in really long time, since the very beginning of the podcast, as I was just kind of getting my feet under me, as they say. But 32 years ago today, on August 10th, 1993, saw the release of yet another all-time masterpiece film from the greatest decade Hollywood ever had, the 90s, and what I believe to be the single best year that Hollywood ever had, not in terms of total box office gross, but in terms of the percentage of big studio films, which are 9 out of 10 or better. That would be 1993. On this day, 1993, saw the release of Steven Zaillian's just phenomenal true life account. I guess you could call it a docudrama, but it plays like a regular dramatic film. It just happens to be that, an enormously high percentage of this movie happened pretty much as Steven Zaillian and his sparkling cast lays out. But on August 10, 1993, Searching for Bobby Fischer opened in theaters. Now, this is a film that did not have a big budget. It was budgeted and marketed. It was no more than $15 million. And it did not even make back its production cost. And given the intensity of the good reviews, there were so many critics that had this film in their, top 10 and thought the movie was just a masterpiece. And it's at 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. There are a ton of Oscar winners for Best Picture. In fact, I would say that there are very few Oscar winners for Best Picture that are even as high as 98%. That means if you're not a CPA like my dear old dad and don't have the savant brain that I have, 49 out of every 50 critics give this film a thumbs up. And if you were to go on Rotten Tomatoes, you wouldn't just see reasonable good reviews. Most of the reviews collected there are people saying, holy shit, what a movie this is. And before I forget, it's the only site or the only streamer that it's on for free that I can find is the site called Hoopla. It's a free app. I guess you have to deal with commercials. But if you go on Amazon Prime or Apple, you get it for $2 or $3. This is just a fantastic film. So the title is metaphorical. It's not literal. The title, Searching for Bobby Fischer. Well, for those who don't know, Bobby Fischer is often regarded, even now, as the most talented chess player who ever lived. Now, I've seen videos with present-day chess masters, grandmasters, such as Alexandre Botez and more famously Magnus Carlsen. And Magnus Carlsen isn't sure that Bobby Fischer's game would necessarily translate to today. He's studied Fischer and some of his most famous matches, like with Boris Spassky and some of the other players that he was famously competitive against in the 50s into the 60s. He's not so sure that, he's not admitting, if Fischer, if you took his brain and his chess acumen and threw him into nowadays, I don't know that he would be that great. So I think I could beat him. And Carlsen wasn't saying it in a funny way, wasn't trying to get a laugh or puff out his chest. He studied the guy and he said, I think that I could beat him. What do you want me to tell you? I think that I had the game better than this guy. But when this movie was made, and when Fred Waitzkin, that's the name of the principal characters in this film, it's the Waitzkin family. Joshua Waitzkin is a 7-year-old boy as we meet him. He's played by a young actor who was just really marvelous in this film, named Max Pomeranc, plays young Josh. And the always reliable Joe Mantegna plays Fred Waitzkin, upon whose book this movie is based. Fred Waitzkin wrote a book called Searching for Bobby Fischer, and it was, again, not a literal title. But Bobby Fischer was the world's #1 chess player, unquestioned, undisputed. He was a genius. His IQ was in the Einstein, Curie, Oppenheimer, Stanley Kubrick level. And at a certain point, he just didn't want to do it anymore, and he disappeared. And there were some people who thought that he had died, but he simply In the immortal words of Warden Norton in Shawshank, he up and vanished like a fart in the wind. He didn't want to know from anybody. He had some money, and he just basically lived overseas. He moved around, and he became like a hermit and a recluse. That's what some people said. But the idea was, the concept of searching for Bobby Fischer, the figurative symbolic meaning, was after Fischer disappeared, the hunt was on, not for Red October, but to find the next Bobby Fischer. Who will be the next American-born, maybe even New York City-born, as Fischer was, a New Yorker, chess genius? And Fred Waitzkin's book is about his son, Josh, who at age 7, without ever having played chess, inexplicably had abilities that did not make sense. And this is where, when you talk to people, and a lot of people don't get the concept, when you say that someone is a child prodigy, it means not just that they're good at something, but that they're good at something that they have no business being good at. And the Joshua Waitzkin that we meet at the beginning of the film is a kid who, he seems like a normal kid. He's into baseball. He wants to be the second baseman of the Yankees or for the Yankees when he grows up. And Fred Waitzkin wrote for the New York Times. He was not a sports columnist, but he was somebody who knew enough. And I think that he was part of the group that put together like the weekend, the kind of special Sunday Times weekend section. So he knew a lot of people within sports, and he, in the pre-internet era, he knew how to ask the right questions to get in touch with certain people if he needed to. So you have Joshua Waitzkin, Fred Waitzkin, and Bonnie Waitzkin, the mother of Josh and the wife of Fred. And the episode that I did about a year and a half ago was focusing on Joan Allen and how great she is in what is supposed to be the thankless role of the wife and mother, standing on the sidelines, either approvingly or disapprovingly, tisk, 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 or, being fully supportive. And it's supposed to be that kind of role. But Joan Allen, who was still, not that she was still so young, she worked with Coppola, and Peggy Sue got married 7 years earlier, but she was on the rise. And this was the kind of role that in lesser hands is a throwaway. But because Joan Allen just had such an expressive face and such a way with a certain line and the way that she would deliver a line. She went on to be nominated for 3 Oscars later in the decade. Like, this was a key film, but because there were people who saw her in this and said she can do more than just play the disapproving or dutiful or supportive wife. She's got a lot of range, and we really haven't taken advantage of this person, and let's go. Because she was in Nixon with Anthony Hopkins playing Pat Nixon. She was nominated. She was up for The Crucible with Daniel Day-Lewis. She was up for Best Actress for The Contender, and I got to be honest with you, she gives a better performance in The Contender than Julia Roberts, as much as we love Julia and Erin Brockovich. If you compare the two performances, you tell me that you don't think Joan Allen has the trickier role and gives the better performance, holding her own with a lot of big fucking hitters in Jeff Bridges, who was really great as the president. He could have won supporting actor. He was nominated and didn't win. And also the very formidable Gary Oldman. And she has scenes with Oldman where he is just throwing all kinds of talent and star power at her. He's now Sir Gary. She does not blink. Well, in the world of this film, Bonnie Waitzkin is the emotional center and the core of the movie. Because this is a story, and the real life story of Joshua Waitzkin is of a chess prodigy. Somebody he's operating at the level of a grandmaster. He's barely played, and he's already almost at a level where he could beat the next 10,000 people who sit down to play chess with him. And it gets into the notion of showbiz parents or sports parents pushing their kids too hard, or maybe they didn't push them hard enough. We don't know. And that's the thing, because it's life. There is no correct answer. Stefano Capriati, now Jennifer Capriati is an example of a tennis prodigy. Maybe you know the name, maybe you don't, but Jennifer Capriati, by the time she was 9 years old, 9. That's 3rd grade for those who it doesn't automatically calculate like it does for me. By the time Jennifer Capriati was 9 years old, she was the best tennis player, best tennis player in the whole country in the girls 12 and under. 12 and under, not 9 and under, not even 10 and under. There are 12-year-olds who are 5'8". Jennifer Capriati was this little round pipsqueak. Forgive me for saying that. I've seen video. She was small. She's 9 years old. She beat the shit out of everyone. It was barely competitive. I actually knew a young woman who took a set off of her, and it was either the semis or the finals of the Nationals, 12 and under, and it was miraculous that she even got a set. That's how good Jennifer Capriati was. So the notion of a prodigy, what we see from Josh Waitzkin is with very little training, he is humiliating people who are great chess players. And so the film takes the form of a kind of an underdog story, a little bit of a Rocky story, in the sense that there is another kid who is probably as naturally gifted as Josh when it comes to chess, but he is trained and he's an absolute killer. And if it's possible for a 7 or 8-year-old boy to be an intimidating screen presence, this kid scares me watching the film now. He's this little guy. You know, yeah, you could stuff him into a garbage can. I don't want to go anywhere near this kid. I'm scared of him sitting here thinking about in the movie. He's almost giving me the chills. That's how frightening of a presence this kid is, because he just wants to win. And he doesn't just want to win. He wants to really rough up his opponents intellectually. He wants to make them look stupid. And this is another thing that you get into in this movie. The idea of, do you have to, even temporarily, do you have to hate your opponent to give yourself the best chance to win? This movie seems to argue that the answer to that question is yes. But Bonnie Waitzkin, as the emotional center of the film, she says, no, 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 no. Anybody tries to instill hate of any sort in my son, fuck you. I'm taking him away, and you guys can just argue about it amongst yourselves. Because this kid, our boy, is innately kind and good and decent. And if that's not good enough to win, then so be it. Because I'm not going to let any of you make him into something that he is not. And, well, I don't know. Will you tell me? The movie Whiplash gets into the same thing. The character, the band instructor, it's funny that I can't remember the actor's name. He was in Spider-Man. He played Jonah Jameson. He was an absolute riot. And then he was just in Red One with The Rock as kind of a jacked Santa Claus. But that movie, with Miles Teller, it gets into the idea of an abusive band instructor. Now, in the world of Searching for Bobby Fischer, at a certain point in the film, Fred Waitzkin has kind of taken Josh as far as he can go, and he wants to put him in with an actual chess coach. And because of his connections with the New York Times, he is put in touch with a gentleman named Bruce Pandolfini, played by another all-time home run hitter, Sir Ben Kingsley, for the second time in 1993, being in just a phenomenal movie. He plays the vice president in Dave, and he shows up with about 30 minutes left, and you know that it's going to be a big actor because they've been teasing Vice President Nance for the whole movie, and all of a sudden here comes Ben Kingsley, and he is fantastic. Well, he plays Bruce Pandolfini in this movie, and the real Bruce Pandolfini is a demanding coach. He's a chess genius, a great player in his own right, but now he just, kind of on the side. He's not as active in teaching chess anymore, but he has a lot of really smart players that he still works with. And he wants to turn Josh into like the other kid, where he's going to hate his opponents and he is going to just rub their face in how much better he is and all of this. And so the movie Whiplash gets into the concept of, is it ever okay to be abusive to someone who your job is to teach them how to play a game, play a sport, play an instrument in an orchestra or a band? Is it ever okay? And the movie Whiplash, it's kind of a sick twist. The movie seems to be arguing, yeah, go right ahead. J.K. Simmons. I don't know why I suddenly remembered it now, but the J.K. Simmons character in the movie Whiplash is an absolute horrible, disgusting piece of shit. That's a guy you just want to fucking crack his head open. You want him to just shut his fucking mouth. But the movie seems to argue he doesn't get the best out of everyone in the band without degrading, abusing, violating them in every possible way. Searching for Bobby Fischer doesn't go anywhere near that far. But the Joan Allen character at various points, she's not the dutiful wife. She is not the fully supportive, thankless role, fully supportive spouse, fully supportive mom. No. You stop screwing around with my kid. You don't even think about talking to him that way anymore. You don't insult him. You don't even, not even a hint that you're telling him if he's not good enough, he's not good enough. Telling him that he needs to be meaner? No. And the irony in this movie is that Ben's character of Pandolfini, he has very specific ways, not about chess, because Bonnie Waitzkin doesn't know shit about chess. Neither does Fred Waitzkin. They don't know anything about chess. Bruce Pandolfini understands a lot about chess, but he doesn't understand as much about human nature as he likes to think. And his turn, the fact that his character, without spoiling it, he reaches a point in the movie where Josh takes an action in a critical match. He takes an action that the Bruce Pandolfini that we met in this movie would have been horrified. Whether he was in charge of the kid or not, he would have been horrified that the kid did this instead of that. But when we reach the moment in the movie where Josh pulls off this maneuver, he looks on his young student with immense pride and almost a joy that, maybe he can have his cake and eat it too. Maybe he can win the right way. Maybe he didn't have to. Maybe I never had to train my kids to hate their opponents. Maybe I just had to train them to be better chess players. Because if you got the chops, you can always get a little bit better. And even the best players, as Mike McDermott, Matt Damon's character, points out in the movie Rounders, even the best players, regardless of the sport or activity, they're not immune to getting a little rattled when things go wrong. And in the world of this movie, the fearsome chess genius, the 7-year-old kid whose name I don't remember what his name is in the film, John something or other, I believe, or Jonathan, he gets rattled because Josh makes a move that it's not what he expected, and it kind of throws him off his game. And the other main character in the film, Vinny, is played by Lawrence Fishburne, who also had a big year in '93. He played Ike Turner, Tina Turner's speaking of abusive, super duper abusive husband, Ike Turner of Tina, in What's Love Got to Do with It? And man, Angela Bassett. I mean, she could have won an Oscar for Best Actress for that. What an incredible performance. But Lawrence Fishburne, in a similar way to Ben Kingsley just being fantastic in the movie Dave, Lawrence Fishburne just crushes it in What's Love Got to Do with It? And here he is in an entirely different role. He's also a chess wizard, not on the level of Josh Waitzkin, but a brilliant chess player. And he's somebody, and when I went to New York University, I got to NYU a year after this movie was released. My orientation was August of 1994. This movie came out, as I say, August 10, 1993. And for those who also don't know, I'm a New Yorker. I assume everybody knows this. New York University is in Lower Manhattan. It more or less surrounds Washington Square Park. And in Washington Square Park in the mid-90s, there were a lot of people playing hacky sack. If you're under 30, you may not even know what a hacky sack is, but there were a lot of hacky sackers, but there were also a lot of people playing chess for money. People passing $20 bills back and forth, $10, $100 bills. It's completely illegal, but whatever, you're doing it anyway. And so Lawrence Fishburne plays a chess hustler named Vinny, who it seems that he makes a decent amount of money just beating people in chess. And we get the idea that he can hold his own with people at the grandmaster level. He's that good. But he also, his method of chess is not the same as Bruce Pandolfini. And you expect that there's going to be more conflict between those two characters, but they aren't. Because, and this is a bit of a Cobra Kai twist, where Miyagi-Do karate and Cobra Kai, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. There is nothing preventing you from taking elements of both mindsets, methodologies, strategies. You can formulate your own process by using the best of both. There's nothing stopping you. So, Bruce Pandolfini's chess theories and the generally accepted theories of chess are what he teaches Josh. But Vinny teaches Josh to risk everything, that in order to maximize your chances of actually winning, you must risk losing. And In chess parlance, what that means is there are opportunities for you to bring out your queen early in the game. And Vinny would say, do it. Because, yeah, you temporarily may give yourself a higher percentage chance of losing. But in the long run, as good a player as you are, you might mess your opponent up. Your opponent may not, but why is he doing this? And they may start thinking, and they might make a mistake because you've made an unconventional, aggressive move. So the film follows the family as Josh continues to improve at chess and start to get noticed nationally. Nowadays, it would be a bigger deal because everything being on the internet, you would have, a social media page, and he would probably be signing autographs, and the family could easily monetize what a genius this kid is. But it gets into the idea of sports parents. And without saying it, this is what we take this away from the movie. Fred Waitzkin is starting to become Stefano Capriati. He's starting to become, Steffi Graf's father was arguably worse than Stefano Capriati. But the kinds of parents that every minute of their child's life, the spelling bee parents, where the kids are working 40 hours a week just memorizing the dictionary just in case they get asked certain words. Well, Fred Waitzkin is starting to turn, in the world of this film, into that kind of overbearing parent, almost like he's trying to succeed and live vicariously through his own son. But it's Bonnie Waitzkin who reels him in. You don't need to do this. And there's actually a really horrible scene where Josh seems to lose a game on purpose because he's tired of being fucked around with. He's the 8-year-old boy. He wouldn't say it that way. But he's tired of playing chess as if it is blood sport. Speaking of Van Damme, who I talked about yesterday. But it's not. It's a game. I'm good at this game. I can play this game better than almost anyone else. But that's what it is. It's a game. Don't act like the world is going to go downhill if I lose a chess match. If I lose a big match, we're all still okay. Fred Waitzkin still got a great job. Bonnie Waitzkin is still a wonderful mother. We don't need to take this that seriously. The kid's not playing for $1 million. This is not tennis. This is not Jennifer Capriati going as far as she did. But Jennifer Capriati, it's unspoken, and it hadn't happened yet when Searching for Bobby Fischer was produced. She collapsed. She couldn't take it anymore. She was pushed too hard, too fast. And after winning the 1992 Olympics, and she had had success up to that point, her life fell apart. She burned out. She had been pushed too hard for too many years from too young of an age. And looking at the movie through that prism, because I would say that in terms of prodigies, Capriati might be the closest in real life to the Joshua Waitzkin that we're presented with in this film. Somebody with talent that is just at the level of stupid, given the age, and the parent just pushed her too hard. And so when they take their foot off the accelerator, not surprisingly, Josh regains his love for this game that he hasn't been playing as long as the other grandmaster level kid. And there's so many great performances in this film. David Paymer, who when he shot this movie had not yet been nominated for supporting actor for films released in 1992. He was nominated for Mr. Saturday Night, and that got him more work going forward. He has a pretty big role in Get Shorty. I guarantee you he got that role because of his Oscar nomination for Mr. Saturday Night, which would have been about a year prior when Get Shorty was cast. But David Paymer in this film plays one of the parents of a chess genius, not at the level of Josh. And William H. Macy, whose career was just getting going, still had, that kind of same look where he always looked older. He's hilarious in his role as another somewhat overbearing, aggressive parent, but he does it in the William H. Macy sort of way, so we kind of like his character. But this movie has so many incredible scenes and moments, and I know nothing about chess. Nothing. I played checkers growing up. I never played chess. But somehow, the movie manages to make us and get us excited about these individual games, even if we don't know anything. Okay, he took his queen out. BFD. That means nothing to me. He took the queen out. Congratulations. Nothing. But this film has scenes that are just extraordinary. And one that I will spoil is it's a big tournament, and the parents are, not surprisingly, acting like assholes, coaching their kids from the sideline, being very boisterous and loud and getting into it and, maybe even getting into scraps with one another. So what the people at the tournament do is they throw the parents out. Get the fuck out of here. And they send them to some resource room with like a TV feed or something like that. And when the parents are sent away, the kids and the administrators all burst into cheers. I mean, that might be the single best moment in the entire film. But the Ben Kingsley character, Bruce Pandolfini, even if he has these moments where he's too rough on Josh, thinking that he needs to act this way to get the best out of him. It's not coming from a bad place. He, again, not to excuse it, but he really thinks that his method here is the way to go. But just from the purely chess perspective, this is something that I didn't know before seeing this movie. Chess is the kind of game where moves early, it could be 3 or 4 moves into the game, may not immediately signal the end of the game, may not be checkmate, but chess is a mathematical game way in excess of checkers. And the idea is there are going to be times where you're going to look down at the board and there will be a move on the board of all of your possible moves. There will be a move that is not going to end the game. But if you make this move, it will signal the start of end game. And what Bruce Pandolfini tries to get across to Josh in as calm a way as possible. When you know this, when you see the board set up a certain way, it might be 15 moves away. But when you think you know that you can see an end game in 15 moves, you don't worry about your clock because they have the time clocks. You take your time. You find that move and you take as long as you can. When you think you can lock up the game in 20 moves, 15 moves, 12 moves. And what Ben Kingsley says to me is the single best line reading of that man, an extraordinary actor, an Oscar winner, and never phones in a performance. The single best moment of his career. Don't move until you see it. And there is a moment towards the end of this film where Ben Kingsley, watching on a monitor, sees exactly what he told Josh in some of their sessions. There's going to come this point in a game. The board is going to be right there. You're going to know it, but you may not be 100% sure. You take your time. Don't move until you see it. And as this plays out in the movie, we imagine that Josh hears the voice of his coach repeating softly, not aggressively, don't move until you see it. Don't move until you see it. It's a top 10 maybe favorite moments of any movie in the 90s. It's so perfectly executed, from the music to the reactions of the characters, the way it's edited. Can't do it any better. And, I feel like a lot of people have seen this movie. This is not a best movie you've never seen. Yeah, for certain people. But it's just, summer of 1993 was an incredibly stacked summer, and there were still huge movies in the multiplexes when Searching for Bobby Fischer came out. Now, there are summers where this would be counter-programming, and earlier in the summer, a month earlier, you had Rookie of the Year, the baseball movie with Thomas Ian Nicholas, Daniel Stern, and Gary Busey, and the late John Candy as a Chicago Cubs announcer. That was a counter-programming, comedy sports fantasy that ended up being way bigger at the box office than people expected. But Searching for Bobby Fischer, it just didn't land. And it was out of theaters within a couple of weeks, it's really unfortunate because it is a phenomenal film. I don't know anybody who has seen it who does not love it. It's just, it's 4 stars. It's a 9, 9.5, or 10 out of 10. Everything it's gorgeously shot, impeccably acted. The editing, the music by James Horner, the late great James Horner. It's an alchemy. It's somehow greater than the sum of its parts, whether or not you know anything about chess. Searching for Bobby Fischer, released on this day, 1993, written and directed by Steven Zaillian from a book by Fred Waitzkin, and starring Max Pomeranc, Joe Mantegna, Joan Allen, William H. Macy, David Paymer, Lawrence Fishburne, and a fantastic Sir Ben Kingsley as real-life chess coach Bruce Pandolfini. This has been episode 591 of the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Sunday early evening here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.